guys, Tomboy601, and welcome to Best of the Line, episode 4. Today, we choose the best tech tree and a premium ship of the line for the American standard battleships. And let me explain. There are two lines of battleships for the American, and they're a bit weird due to the development history of the game. So the two lines play somewhat similarly, but do have some distinct differences, which is why I had you all vote in this community poll. And well, because of that, we're going to do two separate videos. If you want to be able to vote in future polls, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know down below, what is your favorite American battleship, and extra credit if it's one of the standard battleships. So what are American standard battleships? Before we dive into that, let's explain the three classifications of American battleships, and you'll be able to see just how jumbled the tech tree is in this game. The first one is the American dreadnoughts. These are ships patterned off of the British ship Dreadnought. Basically, think of it of lots of two-barrel turrets everywhere they can put turrets, and then other guns wherever they can put other guns. That's just an easy way to do it. Then we have the American standard battleship. This precedes, or this comes after, the American dreadnoughts, and that's what we'll mainly be focusing on today. These ships have their guns located in 4 turrets, 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, and they feature the all or nothing armor layout. Now, the all or nothing armor layout, the philosophy involves heavily armoring the areas most important to a ship, while the rest of the ship receives no armor. The all or nothing concept avoided light or moderate thickness of armor. Armor was used in the greatest practical thickness or just not at all. Thereby, it provided either total or no protection. Compared to the previous armoring system, all or nothing ships had thicker armor covering a smaller proportion of the hull. Because of this, they tend to be very slow for their tier, but have tight turning circles because they tend to be shorter overall. The last style of battleship that the Americans run is the fast battleship. This means that the hull has pretty much been elongated. They have 2 turrets up front, 1 in the rear, but we'll go into more detail about those next week. In the Legends tech tree, the dreadnoughts are represented by Wyoming and New York. The standard battleships are represented by Nevada, New Mexico, Tennessee, Colorado, Kansas, and Minnesota, and the fast battleships by North Carolina, Iowa, Maine, and Montana. And as you can see, our tech tree, very, very jumbled. This is likely because when the game started out, there was only one line, and it only went up to tier 7. So player progression for this kind of made sense, right? You get 2 dreadnoughts, then you get 2 standard battleships, and then the crown jewel of the line is the Iowa, which is a fast battleship. But now that more lines have been introduced, it really doesn't make that much sense. But for the ease of thinking, think that the top of the line, that's going to be the fast battleships, and the bottom line, that is going to be the American standard battleships. Now that we have gotten all of that out of the way, let's talk playstyle for these ships. First off, I will say I think the American battleships are some of the best in the game. They feature accurate guns with heavy hitting AP. They also have very strong AA, which comes in handy with the carrier filled skies, especially down at the lower tiers. The downsides for this, well, they have very slow speeds, as we mentioned earlier. And because of this, you're going to want to play towards the middle of the map, and you're going to want to, kind of angle in and then angle out as you wait for your guns to reload. The reason you want to play in the middle is it can cut down the transit time between targets. Also, you have the highest selection of targets without really having to move anywhere, if that makes sense. Because like we said, your maneuverability, that's the big pain point for you. As far as commanders go for these battleships, my go-to pick is Azure Lane, New Jersey, with the cracked out AP build. Her base trait boosts main battery damage when you shoot at something that's over 10 kilometers. The inspirations we run are Celiax and Arthas the Cold. Celiax buffs AP damage. Arthas buffs damage by 20% when a catapult fighter is up. Then we are running Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Firefighter, and her unique skill, Don't You Just Love It, which buffs dispersion and citadel damage to the ship that if you hit their citadel. And then the legendary skill we're running is Fight Fire with Fire. For those of you following along at home, if everything lines up and you have the plane up and you hit a citadel, you are buffing that hit by 54%. So a just ridiculous amount of damage that can be done when using this vessel. For the free-to-play player, I recommend William Sims. You're going to want to run Iachino and Cunningham as the inspirations. And then Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Marksmanship, Reaching Out XXL, and the legendary tier skill that we're going to use is Fight Fire with Fire. This is kind of the default accuracy build, and that's what you want to build in with the American BBs. You want them to be as accurate as possible. As far as consumables go, the American battleships start out with having an improved damage control party. The DCP is usually active for about 15 seconds on most battleships. On American, it is active for 20 seconds, and I know this may not seem important, but at least when I started the game, I treated DCP as just a button that wipes the damage over time effects, and then it would just have a cooldown time. And that was the only way I thought of it. But the duration is important because when it's active, you can't have any new damage over time effects stacked on top of you. This can be helpful because if you are healing a flood and a second barrage of torpedoes comes at you, if those torpedoes hit you prior to the repair party going on cooldown, they can't add any new damage over time effects to you, which you'll be mighty, mighty thankful for. The other consumable that you kind of start off with is the repair party. It's a fairly standard repair party. You heal a little bit of damage, but not a ton. After that, we start to get a little weird and start losing any sort of rhyme or reason as to what consumables are granted and where they sit within the selection module. So you may get a secondary battery enhancement in the third slot. You may get a fighter plane. You may get a spotter plane. You may get enhanced AA damage. And one of those 4 consumables will be either you won't have a 4th slot, or they'll all be available to choose one of them in the 3rd slot, or they'll be spread over the 3rd and the 4th slot. It is not really, there doesn't seem to be, like I said, a rhyme or a reason to what consumables they actually give you. Just sort of use your best judgment. You'll see I have fighter plane a lot, but that's because I'm running the Arthas build that requires the fighter plane. I think a lot of people run spotter planes, which is totally understandable. So kind of just make your best judgment as far as what you think should go where. As far as a default build for modules go, the first slot is a bit weird. The American battleships don't have access to aiming system mod 1, so you have a lot of options. My sort of default I like to go with is the secondary battery mod. I figure if a destroyer gets close, I will want the extra range that comes with the secondary battery, though I can also see the very strong argument of, well, we have strong AA, why not buff the AA? I will be honest, a lot of the time I spent in the lower tiers with the American battleships was prior to the carriers being introduced, so they didn't bother me as much down there. So if you're grinding through the line, I think the AA is a very strong pick, or the turret traverse can also be a very strong pick. All 3 of them are great picks. I personally run secondaries. In the second slot, I like steering gears to help with swinging the rear of the ship from being angled to being out and having all the guns available. Especially with the tight turning circle on these ships, you're going to be doing that sort of swing out and swing in a lot. So steering gears is a nice option to have. In this third slot, I go concealment. And then the Americans get a unique module called the Artillery Plotting Room that gives you an improvement of 10% to your dispersion. These ships we want to build into accuracy. We want to, go down that path. Making these ships more accurate is always going to make them more deadly. So that's the commander. That's the modules. Let's talk about the best tech tree ship compared to her peers and the best premium. And for the tech tree, I'm going to go with the tier 4 Nevada. Yeah, I know. I think the easy pick is, oh, it's Minnesota, right? 16-inch guns, super accurate, huge broadside DPM, and I understand why if you think Minnesota is the best. But hear me out. She is the first standard battleship for the Americans. She's the lowest tier standard battleship for the Americans. She feels like a modern ship at that tier, while everyone else is seemingly messing around with other weird formats. Some people still have dreadnoughts, some people still have this and that. Like, she feels modern. Additionally, she has 356 millimeter guns, which are some of the biggest at the tier. And as we progress down the line, the standard format does sort of start to show its age, right? The layout of the two guns in the front, the two guns in the back, and having to show a good amount of broadside to get all of them off, starts to show its age as we move down the line, especially as we get to the 16-inch guns, and we're still using the all or nothing armor scheme, which means you just have a ton of armor that is available to be farmed for HE. So Nevada is my pick because I think she is incredibly strong compared to her peers at the tier. She stands out. Also, I know you're probably seeing an orange Nevada on the screen. You're like, Tommy, what is this abomination? Well, the real Nevada was painted that color when we exploded a nuke on her as part of testing. And I was like, ooh, we're just going to nod on back to that. So that is my tech tree pick. What is going to be my pick for the premiums? And well, it has to be the tier 5 California. California was only available for a limited amount of time in a bureau project. Since then, she has not been purchasable. Since she is not purchasable, she's only been sort of crate decorations. If you want to get her today, I think your best chance is the Super 5 crates or the Super V crates that come around several times a year. That will likely be your best bet to obtain California. And what California is she's an example of a refit Tennessee class. She was refit to basically have a massive amount of AA while maintaining the majority of the rest of the great things about the Tennessee class. So essentially, she's also just like a New Mexico class. They're very close as far as their in-game performance goes. So she gets all the benefits of being a tier 5 battleship, a tier where already battleships are sort of the best ship to be in. But then you get an insane amount of AA DPM when it feels like the majority of tier 5 games these days have an aircraft carrier in them. So having what is one of the deadliest AA ships in the game at the tier, beautiful. California, incredibly strong, and that's the reason it's going as my favorite premium ship. But that's not all this week, because this week we do have an honorable mention, and this goes to Constellation. So far, this is the only American battlecruiser in the game, but it does sort of maintain the American standard battleship layout, which is why it's going in this video. The ship trades armor for speed and utility, but with that, it comes with a couple of fun quirks. While it has the 16-inch guns that are common at the tier, it also gets battlecruiser dispersion, which is incredibly accurate, and it has a 20-second reload, which is a ton of fun, which means you can just chunk people. You also get torpedoes and a radar, and overall, this is getting my honorable mention because it is one of my favorite ships to play at tier 7. It is just fun and unique and different, and yes, it's a bit of a challenge to play, but that's why it goes and gets the honorable mention. So yeah, that is the best American standard battleships. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you liked the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. See ya.